I now call the meeting of the Silver Falls School District Board to order. All are here except for Director McLaughlin, who will be joining us at 7 o'clock. If there's anybody online, we expect to go into executive session and then reconvene at 7 p.m. So now we will go into executive session. Oh, yeah, what's the, sorry, does anybody have that up? Because I don't have it. All right, we are going to move into executive session under ORS 192.6602D to conduct deliberations with persons designated to carry on labor negotiations. Thank you. We will now reconvene. We're back from executive session. We will continue in open session by starting with the flag salute. Please rise.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tom, would you read the board superintendent operating agreement, please?
Sure. Under collaborative governance, members of the board and superintendent will work together in good faith as a team in the best interest of students, modeling a willingness to learn together. Board members will recognize and respect the superintendent's responsibility to manage the school district and direct employees in district and school matters. Board members will give careful consideration, listening to all perspectives, to all issues brought to the board by individuals and district leadership. The board may only make decisions at properly called meetings. Board members recognize that individual board members have no authority to take individual action in policy or district and school administrative matters, unless so authorized by board vote. Board members must follow the chain of responsibility and communicate directly with the superintendent when a question arises or a concern or a complaint is voiced by a staff member, student, parent, or community member. Board members will endeavor to communicate directly with the superintendent or board chair prior to meetings of the board to address questions and or concerns about agenda items. Board members and the superintendent recognize that good answers often require preparation in advance of board meetings. When a board member and or superintendent has an individual concern, he or she must communicate one-on-one with any member of the board superintendent team as appropriate. And in the interest of public transparency and full, robust debate, board members will endeavor to actively engage in and contribute to board discussions and to share their perspectives on topics before the board. Full participation from members in advance of a vote supports the board in making informed, well-considered decisions on important district matters.
Thank you, Tom. Next on the agenda is the agenda review. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as published. We'll take the vote.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Yes.
Janet? Yes. Lori?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
All in favor?
Thank you. All right, we are going to have our student representatives, and it looks like it's going to be Hannah and Bryn. Doesn't say Bryn on our.
Consent agenda.
Oh, it does.
Consent agenda's up.
Oh. You guys just hold on. We're going to do. You could sit down. That's fine, but we're going to do something else. So consent agenda. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. We'll take the vote.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
All in favor?
All right. Now Hannah and Bryn.
Good evening. My name is Hannah Basher, and I am the ASB president. Hello, I'm Bryn Olvin, and I'm the ASB vice president. Thank you so much for having us tonight to share the activities that have been happening at Silverton High School. We will start off with the wrap-up of our fall sports and the start of our winter sports. Our volleyball, football, girls soccer, and girls cross-country teams all made it to their respective state tournaments. Each team put up a great fight in their competitions. We congratulate all of our fall athletes for some hard-fought battles.
This week kicks off the start of our winter sports and tryouts for our boys and girls basketball teams, wrestling and swimming.
We look forward to a great season of our winter sports and tryouts for our boys and girls, and welcome all students to sign up and participate in a winter sport.
Now for our clubs and activities. FFA sent 14 students to compete in their national convention and competition. The Ag Mechanics team placed gold, the highest Silverton has placed at the national level. Also, our FFA advisor, Mr. Towery, was honored with the honorary FFA American degree for providing exceptional service to agriculture education, and FFA as a whole on the national level.
Our Los Angeles clubs, or Eagles, decorated an area in the school with decorations that represent the Day of the Dead. It was a wonderful display and celebration.
The Curious Savage was a big hit for our Silverton Mass Thespian Society. Many attended and enjoyed the fall play.
The Speech and Debate hosted the Fox Invitation at Silverton High School on November 5th. Over 200 students from over 40 schools attended and competed in the event.
Our choir and band programs continue to practice in order to prepare for their winter concerts. Our choraleers also had a blast singing at the Oregon School Board Association convention this past week.
Our Red Cross Club and our Health Occupations Club of America hosted a blood drive at the high school on November 1st.
The National Honor Society held their annual induction ceremony on Wednesday, November 9th. They inducted 33 new students who are all wonderful candidates and represent the pillars of NHS: scholarship, leadership, service, and character.
Again, we have multiple clubs who have been meeting and making plans to include our Future Business Leaders of America, Car Club, Battle of the Books, Fly Fishing Club, Interact, Key Club, and Art Club.
Our 60 students and staff members were nominated by their peers for representing our Fox core values of respect, compassion, dignity, and inclusion for the month of October. Please visit the SHS website to read through all the nomination forms. There will be a live drawing during homeroom Tuesday, November 15th for 5 nominees to receive a free drink from the Frothy Box.
Our athletic trainer, the fabulous Sharaya Johnson, is once again a world champion. She came home with the gold and is the 2022 75K world champ. Congratulations, Sharaya.
ASB is in the middle of our Tree of Giving fundraiser. This year, we have an open mic show, a spelling bee, a Mario Kart competition, teacher karaoke, and a volleyball tournament.
Our goal is to raise $5,000 and shop for 100 students in need in our community during the holiday season. ASB works with the Zenith Women's Club and our high school counselors to make this happen.
Thank you for your time, and go Foxes.
Thank you, girls. All right. Moving on to number 9, our school and principal reports. It looks like we're going to have Scotts Mills up first.
And I think Kirsten Jorgensen and Kevin Palmer are going to present together.
Oh, okay. Let's do it.
As we were preparing for this tonight, we were talking about all the same things. So we thought it would be important that we just did this together, and even down to some of the percentages of our students, like on track and such, were very similar. So we thought we would do this together, and then we have brought some special guests with us to talk about our school. So that's really the highlight of the performance, not us.
And thank you to Daniel. Daniel put together photos. Those are Butte Creek kids and Scotts Mills kids last week at Camp Meriwether. So that'll just be kind of rolling and playing as we're talking.
The first goal we're going to talk about, so during the school year, we're really focusing on closing the gap for our students and making sure that each student is on track to graduate every year. So our goal, our goals is that kindergarten through 8th graders, that our students that are scoring at or above grade level will increase from 40% in the fall to 65% in the spring. And so that is based on both DIBELS and STAR tests. So DIBELS is K-5, and then STAR is for our 6th through 8. And then in addition, Kevin's going to talk about attendance.
Yeah, nothing happens until the kids are there in school, and that's part of our overall SEL goal, or a big component of it for the district. And a few years ago, just before COVID, we went away from looking at just the total attendance number for a school. You know, most of us were above that 92% rate that the state wanted to see. And the ESD helped us through their Everyday Matters, community of practice work, look at it a different way. And we're looking at individual regular attenders, 90% or better attendance. And so that's where we put our focus on now. You'll see Scotts Mills and Butte Creek goals are just slightly different in the percentage we're trying to reach, trying to be realistic for where we are now and what we want to get to. For Butte Creek, for example, we're trying to get back to around that 85% mark that we were in last in 2016 to 17, and it's been down since. So we're trying to return there through a variety of tactics. We've got our district attendance team up and going, where all the schools send reps, administrators, counselors, and we work with the ESD so we can be consistent in our messaging and our strategies across the district in all of our schools. And that is from the K-8s up to the high school, that participation. So it's a good thing.
And at Scotts Mills, one of the things we're really focusing on with our PBIS, along with the attendance, is really providing opportunities for the kids to connect to the school, increasing things that we used to have that we took for granted, and then we were like, we were missing. So we brought back School Responsibility Day. So that's 4 times a year. Each class has different responsibilities around the building, and we have a day where they're all doing that, kind of how it fits in their schedule. But it's really a fun day. Kids, are sweeping or helping with picking up garbage around the campus and doing different things, just to that responsibility about their school. And our buddy day, which has come back, which is a highlight, is each class is partnered with a class from a different grade level. So like I think our kinder and 5th grade, what are you guys partnered with? Second grade, so like our 5th, 6th, and our 2nd graders, and the first Friday of the month, they dress in the same color and they just do a fun activity, and it's really fun. So connecting the kids to the school is very rewarding and helps to bring them and make them want to be there.
For sure. Should we talk about music?
Yeah.
Music is back, as you well know, and another thing that Scotts Mills and Butte Creek have in common is we share the wonderful Nikita Johnson-Williams. A first-year teacher, brand new to the profession, a wonderful singer, and she teaches K-5 music at both schools, and she's doing choir for your school. I'm working on the schedule for that, maybe for next year for choir at Butte Creek. But it's been a hit. At Butte Creek, she teaches from a cart because we don't have a music room yet. Working on that down the road. She does at Scotts Mills. It looks a little bit different at each school, but she's got one of those personalities that just lights up the room. The kids want to be in music class. They enjoy it. They're having fun. And the things she can get even young children to do in the music realm, of which I don't understand most of, but it's incredible. Right from the audition back in the summer, we thought, how's she ever going to get these 3rd graders to do that in 20 minutes? Well, she did. And so she's fantastic, and we're glad to have her, lucky to have her in the district. And it's nice to have the Sound of Music in the halls again.
We had the big reveal today of our choir. We had a Veterans Day assembly, and our 5th through 8th grade choir sang the Star Smile banner, and it was pretty fantastic. And she does the students call her Mrs. JW. She just has there's just those people that have a way with kids. And I was in there one day, and I think she had 1st graders, and she has these bumble sticks. What are those sticks called? They look
boom whackers.
Boom whackers. And she had the 1st grade with the boom whackers, and I thought, oh boy, she's a brave. And this was probably early October, and they managed themselves with the boom whackers, and she just, if a student was misusing the boom whacker, she just, please put it back, and the students responded, and she's just a natural teacher. So it's really exciting to see her growing, and she truly loves music, and she truly loves the kids, and so it's just a great mix. So we're very, very, very thankful. We're excited to have an actual Christmas program in December. December 13th is the Scotts Mills Christmas program, so we're looking forward to that and having a music teacher versus us trying to pretend we're music teachers. So.
She's going to need a nice vacation.
Yeah,
Because
yes.
the Butte Creek program is December 14th. So, you're a brand-new teacher, you're trying to do 2 awesome programs for 2 schools. It's a little bit of work, as you know. But she will pull it off with the help of both staffs, and they'll be great.
Everybody for the
Outdoor school? Yeah, I think we saved the best for last. So we thought we'd come up, do some quick reports, and then bring the kids up. I wanted to give you guys just a real quick overview of outdoor school for the district. It's in my report. Butte Creek, Scotts Mills, Victor Point, Silvercrest, Silverton Middle School, Community Roots, and Bethany are the schools that traditionally participate in outdoor school. And they are, again, this year. Difference is with this year, it's first residential outdoor school since 2019, since the fall of that year before COVID hit. So it's a pretty big deal. Roughly 450 kids, a little bit over 450 kids district-wide. In our district, we'll be taking part in outdoor school this year. And we were hit with a little surprise in mid-August, actually mid to late August, where the camps that we generally use through Northwest Regional ESD raised their prices up $700 per student. So that's not taking into account personnel costs, transportation costs, all of that's the camp costs that John might remember. $225 a student maybe. $700. And so everybody in our district got it into gear really fast and contacted OSU Extension. They're the ones that administer to the Measure 99 grant. And they said, don't worry, we'll let you guys reapply for the additional funds. And so they ended up kicking in an additional $135,000. So about $345,000 worth of Measure 99 funds are sending those 455 kids to outdoor school this year. So it's a cool thing. Let's bring the kids up. Yep, everybody.
tell me your name and what school you're from and your favorite
I'm Mason, and I go to Butte Creek.
I'm Molly, and I go to Butte Creek.
I'm Moira, and I go to Scotts Mills.
I'm Carter, and I also go to Scotts Mills.
Okay, so guys, we'll just go in the order you introduced yourselves. And the first question, they had a few questions to be thinking about last week while they were at Camp Meriwether. The first question is, what did you like most about outdoor school?
Something that I liked most about outdoor school is being able to socialize with other schools.
My favorite thing about outdoor school was doing campfire at night and the night hike.
My favorite thing was that the schedule was really well organized. Like there were scattered breaks, so you didn't have to do a lot of stuff at a time.
My favorite thing about outdoor school was seeing your friends and learning because it's a cool experience to do.
Good job, you guys. Second question, what was a challenging part about outdoor school?
A challenging part for me was being away from my family for a week.
The most challenging thing about outdoor school was that I could not be near family or friends that I knew.
The most challenging thing for me at outdoor school was being away from my house for so long.
The hardest part of outdoor school for me was the cold, because it was very cold at night.
I was wondering if that was going to be one. That's what I heard in the cafeteria today from Matthew. So, all right, guys, you're doing great. The final thing is, what is something new you learned or something you're going to remember? Can be either one.
Something that I learned is, honestly, don't really know right now. Can you come back to me?
The thing that I learned is about the parts of the squid and the worm and different things, and we got to dissect them.
I was gonna say kind of the same thing she said, like about this, like we got to dissect squid and learn about like all of their body parts and stuff, and we got to learn like the different layers of a tree trunk.
The thing I'd remember would be the parts of a tree, yeah, and what the tree was made out of. Something that I learned, that there are 5 stages of a tree, and they all have like big parts of it.
Great job, you guys. Everybody. School board, do you have any questions for our outdoor school kids?
Show me your thumbs. Would you do it again? No or yes? All right.
2 thumbs up, yes.
2 thumbs. I also want to give a shout out to our 2 outdoor school teacher leaders, Gloria Werdinger from Scotts Mills and Stacy Harker from Butte Creek. They did a great job organizing and leading. So hats off to them.
And we're very grateful for a 3-day weekend when they came back. It's been very tired.
For sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Wonderful. All right, next on the list is Silver Falls Education Association. Miss Willow and Miss Hector, are you guys here for that? Just Miss Willow, okay. That is very kind. And I was going to preface this because one of the things that we talked about in the SFEA forum, which was renewed last week, is the idea that we, when we're here as a board, are setting the direction for the district, and we're like really far removed from the nitty-gritty. And our discussions don't always reflect the nitty-gritty because that's by design, that's not our role, right? Our role is to identify resources and connect those with the direction and our goals. And so, you know, Ms. Willows might talk to us tonight. We talked about at the forum just in general that SFEA reps might talk to us about things that are hard and problems that we don't have answers to necessarily. And that is honestly just to show like what it's like. What is education like? Because it is different than it was when we were in school. It's actually different than it was 5 years ago. And this year in particular, we have substitute shortages. We have just staffing shortages. So we're not filling all of our positions, which stretches everybody thin. And so, you know, we talked about our role is just like public comment, that we're, you know, going to listen. We rarely ask questions, right? Because we're assuming that teachers have talked to their principals already. We're not providing solutions, but what we can provide is really a place for understanding of kind of what things are like from that teacher-student perspective, because that's where education happens. And we're like 3 layers removed from that, right? And so I just wanted to kind of lead with that and mention again that it's not our role to necessarily comment or question, but we do want to, you know, listen and understand what the role of the teacher is like, because it is very different from the work that we do. Ms. Willow, take it away.
Thanks. You would think after spending almost 16 years talking to middle school students that this would be easy, but my audience thinks my jokes are funny, and they're shorter, and they'll do anything for a Jolly Rancher, and somehow I don't think that's going to work tonight. So I wrote all my stuff out beforehand so I wouldn't get off task, which is kind of how it goes in middle school. Hello, school board. My name is Erin Willow, and I teach English and Sign Language at Silverton Middle School, and I'm one of our union representatives for my building. I'm here today to share what it's like on the front lines of teaching this year. You may not know this unless you have a student in the district, but we are in a dangerous zone for cold and flu season. Not only are many students missing school with all those germs, but teachers are as well. We have little to no subs in our schools, so teachers are losing prep periods to cover for other teachers or doubling up on classes, which means learning is being lost. Our students are spending their time sitting in the gym or having PE teachers covering 2 or 3 classes at a time. This doesn't seem problematic until you realize teachers are missing out on contacting parents and helping students with work and grading papers and prepping and planning material, or in my case, just making extra copies because I never counted out right. We spend time after school, after helping students, after staff meetings, and after IEP meetings, working for free at home instead of spending time with our own children or our dogs, making dinner, or simply taking a breath from a very busy day. It is what it is, and teachers are certainly used to picking up the slack, but we are all weary as well, behind on grading and goals, and conferences are right around the corner. We are tired, we are burnt out, and we are poorer this year than we were last year. Many teachers with shorter preps, like those who work in our K-8 schools, are often working around the clock without even the basic right of a bathroom break. In some schools, the middle school being one of them, our classes are so overcrowded that we spend a majority of our time managing student behaviors and needs. For example, one of my ELA classes that supports struggling learners has 29 students in it. These are students who, at best, have a reading and writing level 3 or more grade levels below their peers. They each get maybe a minute or 2 of my time and support because there are simply so many of them. There are many examples more extreme than this, and our students pay the cost for these issues. Fewer subs and overcrowding cost precious minutes of learning. We are coming in early and leaving late without compensation, and we are struggling with our district to get a cost of living raise. Some of our veteran teachers working without a contract right now are making less than they did last year due to the fact that they topped out on the pay scale or insurance costs are higher, and we are in the middle of one of the highest periods of inflation that we've seen in decades. To add to this, we are accustomed to buying things for our students in our classrooms out of our own pocket, but with the cost of living soaring up around us, we have less to gift our students and learning communities. We're tired, we are burnt out, and we're poorer this year than we were last year. You might know that in the past, teachers were happy to work for the Silver Falls School District, even though we were paid less than many school districts within commuting distance, because the students here were wonderful. It was a small community with a lot of heart, and we used to have some freedom on how we taught our content standards. Our students are still awesome. It's still a small community with a lot of heart, but we no longer have the same freedom to teach the standards according to best practices, which is the natural ebb and flow of learning and adjusting that teachers engage in every hour of every school day. Learning and teaching are flexible things, which we build and reshape based on students' abilities, their needs, the processing time, and the pacing of the classroom. The hours required to be a successful teacher here, especially those hours that are unpaid, have increased exponentially, but without any compensation. I can tell you that it has hurt many a teacher's heart in this district to see other districts rewarding their teachers with bonuses, paid working days, or even just a genuine show of gratitude that shares with both our community and the school board that teachers are working hard each and every day for our students. We are tired, we are burnt out, and we are poorer this year than we were last year. As teachers who love their students, love their colleagues, love their building principals, and the classrooms we've worked so hard to make feel warm and welcoming to our students, we're asking you, our school board, to help us end this emotional drain on our teachers. If we are unable to find a means of compromise soon, the morale of our teachers will continue to drain. As teachers, we see so many other districts offering work days for their exhausted staff, opportunities for time with their students instead of working outside the classroom. This year, watching 30 new teachers become part of our SFSD family, I could see that we were at the head of a very real crisis for our district. We don't have a mentor system for our new teachers in place just yet, and we have no real incentive to stay for our veteran teachers, and the weight of the stress has almost reached a tipping point. We are tired, we are burnt out, and we are poorer this year than we were last year. I have worked the entirety of my teaching life in the Silver Falls School District. Sorry. I love my students. I love their parents, and I love being in my classroom. I have always dreamed of the day that a student would come to my door on the first day of school and say, "You taught my mom." In order to fulfill this dream, it means that I need to stay much longer than the 16 years I have already devoted. This year, I have thought very seriously about leaving. I won't get to see my dream completed. I will miss teaching whole families of babies that are on my horizon. I do not consider this decision lightly, but I am tired. I am burnt out, and I am poorer this year than last year. Thank you. Sorry. I knew that would happen, but I practiced it like 5 times at home so I wouldn't do that, and now it's on tape. Dang it. I apologize. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
for listening to me. Appreciate it.
All right, also on the list is the Oregon School Employees Association. Is there anybody online or in the house? No? Okay, we're going to move on then to public comment. So we're glad you're here and welcome you to address the board with your ideas, concerns, or compliments. Please keep the following in mind. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand to be recognized by the board chair. If attending remotely, please use the raise hand feature within Zoom. For the record, please provide your name and relationship to the district. Please keep individual remarks to 3 minutes. If speaking as a representative on behalf of a group of 3 or more, comment time will be extended to 5 minutes. A second public comment period will occur later in the meeting that is specific to discussion and action items only. The board will not hear complaints against individual district staff or board members during public comment. Please understand that the board's primary role is to listen, and you likely will not receive an immediate response. Finally, remember, we all model the way for our students and ask that you share your thoughts respectfully and in accordance with the SFSD Board Decorum Agreement. Is there anybody online who would like to make a public comment?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at the moment.
All right, well, we'll circle back around during the second comment period. Next up is administrator and staff reports. Mr. Drew, would you give us a bond update, please?
I sure will, and Daniel's going to go ahead and pull up the slides and hand me the clicker, and we'll get started. Thank you, Daniel. Eventually, we're going to figure out how to get this over there, so Daniel doesn't have to race back and forth. Thank you, Daniel. Big help. So I wanted to take you through a little bit about where we are in the bond process. We just finished our second bond advisory committee meeting last week. It went very well. And so the 4 things I want to talk to you about tonight is give you kind of a brief overview of the process. You've seen it before, but it's always good to see things multiple times. builds understanding. And then I'll take you through some of the points, agenda items that we had for meeting 1 and then meeting 2. And then we will end with a video that Daniel put together with some of our other colleagues. And then what I'd like to do is have our board member observers comment on the process, what their experience has been like. So in terms of the process, it's there in front of you. It's a little hard to read, and my pointer doesn't work from here. But basically, we started out here in August. And we did a work session, if you recall. We had Wenaha Group and Wright Public Affairs here to kind of explain the process. They also went over with the board the charge of the Bond Advisory Committee. So that was a big one. And so you approved that the following month. We also talked about polling data, which we then reviewed with you at our September meeting. And in October, we had meeting number 1. We just completed meeting number 2. Here's where it starts to get really, really important for the Bond Advisory Committee. The first 2 meetings, meeting 1 was sort of an orientation to the bond process itself, a little bit of collecting feedback. And then the last meeting on the first week in November was to really talk about the middle school. So that's where it really centered around. We talked about the history of bonds in Silver Falls, which every time I hear the story, I learn something new. It's just fascinating. It was a lot of sit and get, but very needed because now the Bond Advisory Committee is going to start making decisions that will affect many generations to come. So again, not to get dramatic, but this is really, really important for our school district. And so in terms of Bond Advisory Committee number 1, that's where we are. This is the agenda. So what I'm showing you here is the exact agenda that we worked off of in the meeting. And we talked about ground rules. We talked about the charge. We spent a lot of time on the charge. There's a very clear understanding of what is in the purview of the Bond Advisory Committee, that it is an advisory committee, and we spent a lot of time talking about what that looks like. We talked about the process, which is this timeline here. We talked about community priorities. We gave a crash course in the bond planning and how that's looking to date. And then we wrapped up. So the meetings are about 2 hours. We use every single minute. And, you know, huge shout out to Wenaha Group that just does a phenomenal job of planning with us for each meeting and really making good use of the time. I would say for each Bond Advisory Committee meeting that's 2 hours, it probably takes 10 hours of prep. So in order to have a smooth 2-hour meeting where members get the most out of it, there's a lot of behind the scenes work as well. Going to Bond Committee meeting number 2, again, it was more of an information sharing. We had a lot of different people giving different points of view and perspectives. Brett Davison and Derek did a great job of going over sort of the bond history, the bonds that have passed and failed, what was written in each bond. And so the committee had that as a background as well. This is the agenda from Bond Advisory Committee meeting number 2. And as you can see, it's mostly information. Steve spent some time going over district operational budgets for maintenance. That's really huge for the committee to understand that there's only so much we can do with our general fund budget, because of course 85% of our budget is wrapped up in salaries and benefits. So it leaves a little bit left over to keep our schools clean and some general maintenance. But in reality, the only way to make the needed fixes that we have is through a general obligation bond. And we ended with sort of a wrap on how committee members were feeling about different bond scenarios. And that ended up being really favorable in terms of the interest and the support and the understanding that a bond is needed. It's very necessary. So having said that, for the first 2 meetings, are there any questions from the board on just a general overview of the meetings? I know 3 of you will have a chance to tell your colleagues a little bit about your experience. And so Daniel's going to go ahead and cue up the video. We showed the video during the last meeting. And so this is sort of a draft of a video to sort of bring awareness to the bond issues that we have at the middle school. So this meeting was centered around the replacement of Silverton Middle School.
Welcome to Silverton Middle School. My name is Brett Davison. I'm the principal here. This is my 6th year in this building, and we are going to do a tour of the building and kind of a day in the life of students and just talk about the issues that we have here. And so you can see behind us the old structure that was built in 1938 and I think first occupied in 1939. Most people driving by don't realize that we don't use that at all, except all of our internet, water, runs through that. No kids go in that building. It's been condemned. Because of earthquake, safety, asbestos, lead, on down the list. So from the outside, it kind of appears that we have a lot of space and a lot of areas for kids, but this is definitely not used. This area over here was expanded in the 60s, and so anywhere there's just one story, those are places that we occupy. And so the front office is here, cafeteria, library, and a couple classrooms in this wing. We have kind of 3 major separate areas of our building, what we call the Schlater Street side, the James Street side, which is over there, and then what we affectionately call Mod City, which is our collection of modular classrooms in the back, which we'll get to later. So those are all kind of disconnected, and we just work our way around this abandoned building each day.
Hi, I'm Sheldon Lassier, teach special ed in the LRC program here at
Chana Chandler. I'm currently teaching art.
My name is Eric Rapay, and I am campus security here at the middle school.
It's a case where I think I've made the best of it. We're in a mobile room, and they were built, the mobiles themselves were built in '96. They have a 20-year lifespan. We installed them after the end of their working lifespan. So now we're using things that really ought to be decommissioned. When I came into my room this summer, it was pretty dingy, and there was kind of holes in the walls, and the carpet is a mess. So I did the best with what I could. I took 80 hours of my summer and just over $500 to repaint and tape off, fill holes and everything, just to make it a comfortable place for students to learn.
My room has had water features, I like to call them, where it just comes out of the ceiling, actually out of the light fixtures one of the times, another time with a different spot in the ceiling, just pouring. So rain is a problem for us. Drinking water is a problem for us. My light switches work or don't work. Our gymnasium is a hallway. So to get from one side of campus to the other, we can't use what most people see from the outside looks like this great building. And so the kids in between classes are passing through the gym, outside, great in the fall and spring, but in the winter, it's really tough.
Play areas that are not secured, there's no fencing, or there's no covered play areas other than the gym. So in order to have, 250 kids having lunch at the same time with enough space to actually be able to move, they have to be outside in a completely unsecured area. We have classrooms that are outside of the fence area. They have no airflow all the way up and down James Street that have to open their doors to James Street in order to get air moving through. Well, the number one, I think, would probably be the playground area, because not only do we have kids that are not in a secured area, they're just outside in the open, but they have to cross through an active parking lot to get to that play area. So we've got maintenance guys coming in and out. We've got high school kids driving like crazy in and out. And so I'm constantly watching a parking lot to make sure nobody gets hit. Our modulars have what we affectionately refer to as the cheese graters, which is these metal ramps and platforms that are supposed to be non-slip, but the kids prove every day when they run and slide across them that they don't work. But I have scars on my hands that will verify that if you do slip on one, that's where it gets its name, the cheese grater, because it chews you up. That every time we have a rainstorm, I wake up at night and I come to work because I know something is getting wet somewhere. And there's a video that you may have seen that I took of a leak in the roof actually going over our electrical panels. And that kind of stuff, unfortunately, is just all in a day's work here, because that's just how we live our life. And unfortunately, we've had to spend a lot of money to patch a roof we don't plan on keeping in order to help fix that. But the patches are just temporary patches. They're going to start leaking again eventually because we didn't re-roof it. We just put a patch on. So yeah, it's common. It's not every time. I would say probably every time there's a really big rain, it happens. But not every time we have just any rain.
Well, of course, the most important one is safety. And my classroom happens to be one of two that are outside of the locked, gated area of the school. So we keep our doors locked, obviously, for the safety of kids, anyone who's in our building or in those two classrooms. But we don't have the protection, I think, that many of our schools do with a full gate of our entire campus. And so we are outside of that, which means our classroom doors that are open to the outside are locked, and so is the door going into the rest of the school. So that also becomes an interruption to instruction. Every time someone shows up at my door, I either have to answer the door or a student has to get up and answer the door, and it's just a continual disruption. If a student wants a drink, we have to send them into the building with that locked key, that same scenario. Multiple sinks in my room as an art teacher, which is a huge plus, and we do use those, but you can't, I have to post not consumable above each of those, so students can't get a drink. The safety is a huge thing, and so knowing that we come to school and our two classrooms aren't protected, there is nothing, that's really hard to know as a teacher.
So again, special thanks to Derek McElfresh and Daniel Vasquez for putting that together, and of course Brett Davison and his teachers as well for their time spent on interviewing. Are there any questions about the video? It is a draft. Eventually we intend to have multiple videos that we use to communicate the dire needs of our facilities. That's also one of the areas in the data that stuck out to us as an area where we want to spend our time. So moving on, I'd like to have our board member observers at the Bond Advisory Committee, and whoever would like to speak first. We have Jennifer, Janet, and Owen, who have graciously given us their time to to observe the process.
I'll start. No, I thought it was an excellent meeting, and Wenaha Group is doing a phenomenal job. I particularly appreciated having, and I'm not going to remember her last name, but Lauren there from Piper Jaffray or Piper Sandler, excuse me, to go over the sort of the financial end of these bonds. I thought that was really well done and helpful. I think what really stood out to me, what continues to stand out to me, is the cost comparison between what is required now versus what it would have been had we passed these bonds several years ago. And it's just, it's extraordinary and it's frightening, but it is what it is. And it just reinforced the point that we have to do this. It feels very existential, especially when you see pictures of the middle school. It's just, I don't see how we don't do this for our students. I think we are in peril. I think the future of our district's in peril if we don't take some pretty drastic action at this point. And that's coming out in those meetings, not because anyone is necessarily pushing that. It's just because those are the facts, and it's just very clear. So that's what stood out to me.
I would say probably the exact same thing. The most impressive thing, standout thing to me, and I think it will be the same going forward. We're sitting in the seat today that, relatively speaking, right where we would have been years ago, where it would have cost, I don't remember the numbers, $15 million to build a middle school, and now we're at $90 million. And I think, 10 years from now, it'll probably be $200 million. So that was very striking, and I think it, really, a lot of people felt motivated by that, I'm sure. The other thing that I was reminded about was the last experience I had trying to pass a bond and sitting in this seat, is that you get 20 different people in a room. Every one of them has a different issue or piece of information they need or a perspective on it. And so there's not like one size fits all, but it's I think a lot of information has to go out to hit all those points.
The part I think that struck me most was Ms. Chandler's emphasis of the fact that, Mr. Rapay too, that campus is not secure. Every other campus, well, the high school is an exception, but there are fences and entries that you have to be buzzed in at. That's not the case there at the middle school, and to me that's scary, and it has been for a long time. So I think that is just a reminder. I also went to the OSBA conference over the weekend, and one of the speakers was a guy like Jeremy Wright, who runs the polls and everything, and he kind of digested the election, the recent election, and basically his message was that education is not on people's minds at all. It wasn't in the issues. It's not something that voters are thinking about, and that his recommendation was to get those people who vote into schools. That's how we get people engaged in educational issues, and this is certainly the perfect opportunity to get them in a school, especially I think the middle school, so people can really see what it's like. So kudos to the folks who put the video together, because I think we need more of that. Because I do think being physically in the school is a good idea, but for those that aren't going to be physically in the school, seeing a video is important.
Any questions for the board? Anything at all? So in terms of next steps, and you saw on the timeline, our next meetings will be in December, January. Then we'll have our meeting in January will be to go over the draft of that the Bond Advisory Committee has come up with, because we're going to need to take that with us into listening sessions, which will start in February and probably go into March a little bit. Because It's not about the bond we want, of course. It's about the bond our community is willing to support. So we need to take that draft and share it with our communities, our different school communities, to get their input, to then see where the adjustments are that we need to make before the bond recommendation comes to you as a board. So after the January meeting, there will be one more in April. Is it, Steve? We don't have the timeline up, but there's a meeting before it comes to the board. And of course, the goal is for the board to take action on that. And we're making steady progress. We will be following the same format that we used in the K-8 listening and learning sessions. We did 7 of those last year. We will be doing 11 of them this year, following the same format, but asking different questions geared towards what the bond recommendation entails. That's a really, really critical part. So I will need your help, board members, in being present for those. Not all of them. We'll figure out a mix, a combination that works for you all, but it will be very important for our public to see our board members at those listening sessions as well. Steve Nielsen, who has been a huge part of the behind the scenes and the planning. Steve and I have spent many hours together brainstorming and planning for the bond committee meetings, but also, this process started for us here 2.5 years ago. So it really started when I first got here in July 2020. We started talking about the long-range facilities planning process, where we are. And so I wanted to give Steve a chance to say any remarks if you want to, Steve.
I appreciate everyone's comments. It's helpful to know, and I think the other thing I would add is that the other impressive thing about Winnehaha, besides running a very tight meeting that packs a lot in, is that they're assigning homework. So I think that's good too. So we kind of ended the last meeting with Lauren McMillan from Piper and her presentation, which was a lot to take in, but that'll be posted on the BAC page. But one of the homework assignments was to go and talk to neighbors and inform folks about the process, what we're doing, what the timeline is. But also, they had a one-pager to show people, to make sure they know how to go and find their assessed value on the website. But it's also good timing right now because people got their property tax statement, so they can kind of measure up what a bond might be. And so I think that helps in the efficiency of the process, is having some things happening between meetings, and we usually send 1 or 2 things out in between, a recap of the previous meeting and a preview of the next, and we get some questions that come in. So I feel good about how it's laid out, and now it's really just time, I think, to turn it over to the committee. I think they've all been caught up and given everything they need, and really start to break things down. And we're just starting to plan for that third meeting now in terms of exactly how that will run. But that's on December 8th, and yeah, it's been, I think, productive so far.
Thanks, Steve. All right. The other thing under administrative reports is, of course, Division 22. We are in compliance, and since it's there, I just wanted to mention that it's there for your review. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer those for you.
Any questions on Division 22? I like the sound of we're in compliance. All right, we'll move on to our financial report then with Mr. Nielsen.
Thank you, Jennifer. I apologize, but these 3 items didn't get posted till this afternoon. Usually my intent is to get these out by no later than the Friday before. Enrollment, monthly report. we are sitting about exactly the same as where we were at this time last month. I think actually +2 district-wide. And so it appears that we've settled in, you know, I think through at least December. We usually see some change a little bit in January, usually down a little bit, but you know, I feel confident to say that when you take the, you know, we have our charter schools on here, and it gives a complete viewpoint of the entire district, and those are the funding for that. It comes through to us, and we pass through. But there's part of it the district retains for certain services we provide. So, but if you take Community Roots out of the equation, because they've dropped, they're the one school that really hasn't recovered, unfortunately. In fact, it's gotten a little worse there. It says in the bottom right there that 36% of our lost enrollment has been recovered, which is about where we've been the last couple months. But when you take Community Roots out of the equation, it's really 40%. And I may have mentioned that before, but I don't remember, so I just wanted to highlight that. And there are 2 schools you can see there in the blue column that are actually above where they were in June of 2020, Butte Creek and Victor Point. Financial statement wise, I actually have a general fund financial statement that is a new look. There are some enhanced reporting products in Forecast 5, which is now called Budget Management Analytics. It was taken over by Frontline. And so this has some pictures, but also some more numbers, and there's a financial statement by function as well as by object. So that's always, I think, kind of neat to look at, so you can kind of see in the major levels of function, instruction, and support services, but also by object, salaries, benefits, purchase services, and supplies. So we'll continue to produce this one, as well as there's some new dashboards that will probably have some different things to look at. The nice thing about this one as well is we have prior year-to-date versus current year-to-date, so you know exactly how things looked through October last year versus October this year, and kind of how things you know, project out. Now that we're 4 months in, we can start to put that out there. I know you know, with 5 years of history in that system, and going through the exercise of looking at the trends, those expense projections are really on point, and we do have our, you know, at least budgeted COLA as part of those projections as well, taking into account that you know, will happen, you know, a little bit later down the road, most likely. The revenues, I think we'll be able to update those a little bit better when we get our next state school fund estimate, which, you know, is still a month or 2 away. So that's that. And then the other thing about some of these new formats is that they've made it easier to analyze some of the special revenue funds, which of course are a higher percentage of our total district revenue. So as we move into the next couple of board meetings, I plan to roll those out as well. Some of the programs are new, so we don't have as much history there. So we're making sure that the projections for the rest of the year and moving forward are accounted for properly in the tool. So I'm looking forward to getting some more information for you on that as well. And then the audited financial statements most likely won't be available till the January board meeting. I'm holding out hope that potentially we could have it for December, but a lot of it at this point is in our auditor's hands. They're done with the field work and starting to assemble financial statements, but they work with a lot of school districts, so most likely that'll be in January. We'll get that full report. And last but not least, I mentioned this last month, but you know, at the end of September, the PERS board adopted the 23-25 biennial employer PERS rates, and it's about 20 pages worth when you take into account districts and fire districts and libraries and cities and so forth. And page 8 of 20 is where Silver Falls School District's rates are, and I attached just that page to board book as well. So our current rates for 21-23 for Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees are 5.06% of payroll. And our OPSERP rate, which we now have, I believe, 2/3 of our employees are OPSERP members, is 1.95% of payroll. Those rates jump to 6.34% and 3.5% respectively in the 23-25 biennium. This is actually a smaller increase than we anticipated. Now, I know the rates seem very low, but the offset to this is our PERS bonds, so our 2003 and 2004 PERS bonds, and then our fall of 2021 PERS bonds. So between those two, or three, I guess, pension obligation bonds, we have to charge about 15.5% of payroll to meet our debt service requirements. So if you take, say, round numbers, 16% plus an average of this 23-25 rate of 6.34 to 3.5, that's going to be probably closer to 4 or 4.5%. So when you combine all that, because we have more employees in OPSERP, it's about 20% of payroll. Now that doesn't include the pickup at 6%. That's a whole different thing. But if you compare 20% and you look up about 6 lines, the nice thing about being in the S's is the general school district rate is on this page. And that's for districts that have never bonded. So if you look at the rates for 23-25 for those school districts, the rates are 27.87% for Tier 1 and Tier 2 and 25.03% for OPSERP. So when you take our all-in rate of 20%, we're saving about 6 percentage points there. Now, of course, part of what we charge to payroll for our newest bond, because we're getting close to being done with the 03 and 04 bonds. I think we still have 2 or 3 years left, but obviously the future of the most recent bond we did has to do with, quite a bit has to do with, investment performance of that side account. And so, what we charge payroll could vary based on that. But right now we're in a pretty good position overall on our rates. So it can be confusing, but when you look at it simply just to take our total rate compared to the school district rate, that's a good way to measure where we're at, in terms of if we're ahead or maybe behind the game there. We're doing well right now with that. So I hope that makes sense. But so those rates take effect not until July 1st, 2023. So that's all I have for tonight, unless anyone had any questions.
Questions for Steve? Go ahead.
Yeah. So going clear back to the enrollment slide.
Yeah.
I noticed something last month, and I forgot to bring it up, but I want to bring it up tonight. We talk a lot about the COVID recovery of enrollment, but I was looking at this chart, and one thing that stood out to me was currently, as of right now, we have 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades that are essentially at or above 300 students. Okay.
Right.
Like 310, maybe average of 310, give or take, among those 5 grades. K through 7, just ballparking looking at it, your average is maybe 260. And so and then I looked back at the 2020 totals.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 5th grade through 12th grade where you had 310 students. So I see this movement of 300 plus students working its way through the system, being replaced by 260 students per grade. And I'm wondering, how does that play currently? How does that play in our facilities planning? How does it play in your projections? I mean, because if that trend doesn't change, that may have nothing to do with COVID, right? If that trend doesn't change, there's a giant enrollment cliff coming, and I'm curious what that looks like, and have you given thought to that?
Yeah, I think that's great analysis, Jonathan. Thank you for that. I know typically we have, I believe, a higher inter-district transfer rate into the high school. I don't know what the number is this year, but typically it's been 10% of the Silver Falls High School population has been from outside the school district boundaries. But Silverton High School also used to be somewhere in between 1320 and 1350 at its peak, and I think we saw it come down to around 1300, pre-COVID, so there was a bit of a downturn there.
Right.
And certainly there's going to be some cyclical elements through the system, and I know, like you said, some of it's COVID, some of it's not, and it is, and then there's the transfer piece. So there are several different parts at play. I know Leslie, when she was at Robert Frost, a year or so or two before COVID, you knew that the two schools used to be packed at 750, and now the total of the two schools is not even 700. And I think it was down to 600 during the pandemic, so at least it's come back some, but there was a projected downturn. You had a grade or two that's smaller, which I think is reflected in Mr. Davison's 6th grade class right now. If you look at that number, it's the lowest in-town 6th grade class we've ever had, 121. So, did you have anything to add to that part?
I think if you go back a few years, we even had, the last time we did an enrollment study, do you remember? Do you all remember that?
Jennifer was part of that with the enrollment work group,
in Portland State.
Yeah.
We had some prediction of declining enrollment
rates
coming,
went
and we
down,
were
yeah.
starting to see that at least at Robert Frost in my last few years there as principal.
Yeah, and my kid is in 6th grade. I think I remembered that like his birth year was a year of that started the birth rate started to decline, and it was just kind of the bookmark for me.
And this topic did get discussed at the BAC meeting last week, and we even talked about, do we need to do a new study? Because you could pretty much throw that Portland state study out the door. It's 5 years old, and we had a pandemic as well.
I recycled mine last year, I think, finally.
What's that?
I finally recycled mine last year.
Yeah,
I said
yeah.
it's not worth keeping anymore.
No, so we're kind of talking about, well, what would be the best next step? Is it a Portland State study, or is there something else out there? But we think that it's probably warranted to get some other, some of that analysis put into play, so we can try to ferret out some of these factors a little bit better.
Right. I mean, if we lose 50 students a grade on average for the next 5 years, that's not insignificant, right? I mean, I guess I wanted to point that out, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make sure we were thinking about that.
Yeah, but until you get, I mean, I think you can see it. If you can see it ahead of time, you can plan for it a little bit. But at this point, we just don't know. It's hard to predict, who's going to walk in the door for any grade, right?
Oh, yeah.
At this point.
And it's
So-
extra complicated because of COVID, because some
Yeah.
people pulled their kids out in private schools and blah, I mean, there's all homeschooling, right? There was different elements of that. That's why I honed in on, okay, so several years ago, it was 5th, I just watched this move, and they're still above 300, even if a little smaller than they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And these other ones are still a lot smaller, even after COVID. So I don't know, I hadn't put that dot together until I think last month, and I forgot to ask.
I think the visual that I get when listening to you is like prey moving through a snake, right?
Right. Yeah, no, it's a bubble of some kind, or else it's the inverse of a bubble. There's just, depleting moving through the system, and I don't know what it means, but we may well be in a situation, we were talking about being down from 4,000 as the new norm, but we might have a new norm that's different yet, and I think we just need to have that in the back of our minds.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Any other questions for Steve? All right, let's move on then to our discussion items. So we have two election-related discussion items. The first is a budget committee vacancy for the WESD, in which we are a member district. A member of our community, Dr. Creighton Helms, has expressed interest in being on the WESD Budget Committee, and WESD says that we need to just confirm that that is okay. And so when it comes time for action, I'm assuming that one of you will move to approve Dr. Creighton Helms as a WESD Budget Committee member candidate. Any questions about that move? All right, moving on to 14B, OSBA has an election. They do a lot of regional representation, and Bill Gropp, I think is how you say his name. He's from North Marion, and he is the sole nominee for position 12. So if we are agreeable when it comes time to taking action, if we could move to vote for Bill Gropp for OSBA position 12, that would be great. Any discussion around that? I do see him like year after year at all the OSBA events. He's very active. All right, moving on. 15, board reports. I already kind of gave my board report, you know, meeting with SFEA at the forum. We just talked about that. One of the things that came up is that, you know, this idea of, does the board understand what it's really like? And so I think that, you know, if we can get comfortable with hearing what it's like when it's tough without trying to solve every problem, because we obviously are limited in terms of resources and constraints, that maybe we can help kind of be a release valve and be a part of our community. That's, I think, an important part of our community, in the sense that if we don't know about it, then the community's not necessarily talking about it, and maybe there's something that we need to advocate for. Like Tom and I went to the Capitol several years ago to get those SIA funds passed, and you know, so that kind of thing is something for us to be aware of. So I just wanted to report on that. We already gave our reports about the Bond Advisory Committee, and so I think we need to move on to action items. Oh, second public comment. Thanks. Is there anybody online?
There are 9 people online.
Is there
but
anybody?
I see no hands raised.
Okay, we'll wait for just about a minute. If anybody is online and would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. All right, and everybody else is thinking about those motions they're going to make and our action items, right? All right, let's move on to action items. The first one is OSBA elections.
I would like to move to elect Mr. Bill Gropp for position 12 on the OSBA board.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to elect Bill Gropp for position 12 on the OSBA board. Any discussion? All right, we will vote.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yep.
Owen?
Yes.
All in favor?
All right, and then the next action item is the WESD Budget Committee vacancy. And there is a motion there for us.
I move to designate Creighton Helms as a candidate for the WESD Budget Committee. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to designate Creighton Helms as a candidate for the WESD Budget Committee. Any discussion? All right.
Tom?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Lori?
No.
Lori, was that a no?
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
Thank you. All, well, majority.
All right, and moving on, we have number 18, the future agenda item request. Anybody have anything that they would like to put forward? All right, well, if there's no objection, we will adjourn.